Hey everybody, today I'd like to talk to you about fear and anxiety that can happen both before and during the Camino, and it can happen to brand new pilgrims and even veteran pilgrims. Well, it's only about a week now until I start my biggest, boldest Camino ever, and which means I'm entering the scariest and most anxious part of any Camino the week before you go. So what are some of the biggest worries that keep us up at night before we go on Camino? Well, one would be fitness. I suppose that's one that I hear a lot with certainly newer pilgrims. I've heard so much about the Pyrenees and the big hills, and my hips and my knees aren't what they used to be. Am I going to be able to do it? What happens if I can't manage it? Well, to make things a bit easier, hopefully you've done at least a little bit of training. You've put your backpack on and you've been out having a bit of a walk. Even better if you've been using some hills and slopes somewhere near where you live. But if not, the key to it really is only walk at a speed that you're not going to get out of breath. So if you can still kind of be talking to somebody while going nice and slow, it's not a race, then you'll be fine. You'll manage it. You might ache a bit the next day if you're not that fit. But certainly, like I say, if you can get out before you start your Camino, so much the better. Well, here's another one. What if I get blisters? Well, you might not, and you might. I've never had any doing Camino, but a lot of people do, and I've seen some pretty big blisters in my time. There are some key things. Don't forget, blisters are pretty much caused by hot and sweaty feet and the fact that the skin is rubbing on this tender skin that's got all hot and wet and soft. So if you can avoid the rubbing and you can avoid your feet getting hot, you've got a really good chance of stopping this. So make sure you've got really good socks designed for hiking. Make sure that they're the thin version. Unless you're going in winter, you don't need winter socks in summer, because of course what do thick socks do when you're hot? It's going to cause the sweat, isn't it? I didn't even need to answer that question. So good quality socks. Some people like to use liner socks as well. Make sure every time you stop for a cafe con leche or whatever you're doing on the way, take your shoes off for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Let the air cool them down, let everything dry off before you carry on. And make sure that your shoes are a good fit. Don't follow advice based just on the brand, the manufacturer. Make sure you spend a bit of time understanding what shoes suit your feet the best. And hopefully all that will be all right. Well, another one I hear a lot is bed bugs. What do I do about the bed bugs? I've never seen any bed bugs. I'm sure they do exist, and I've heard a lot of rumours where a friend of a friend was eaten alive by bed bugs. But I've certainly never seen them. I wouldn't worry about them too much. They're pretty much a rarity. Now another big one, and probably the biggest one actually, you've heard of the phrase, I'm sure, packing your fears. That's what people do, and that's what even veteran pilgrims can do. Looking ahead, thinking, right, I'm going to be doing this new route and it might be a bit colder, so therefore if I didn't take a sleeping bag before, should I put an extra few grams in with a sleeping bag this time? Oh no, let's take that out and let's put a fleece in instead and some warmer socks. No, let's take that out. As you can see, getting a bit too confused over packing bags can make things a lot worse. And the biggest fear should be that you've put too much in your bag, that you can't even carry it properly. You're having to move it forward, then you're having to worry about is it going to arrive where I'm staying that night, because now I've got to plan ahead. It's much easier just to avoid packing things that you may need. Pack things that you do need, and that will make everything a lot easier. And for a last one of the big ones would be the bed race. element where people are worried, well, if I don't book everything ahead, what if I haven't got anywhere to stay for the night? What if I'm homeless? If you can try and find a way of getting yourself sorted for the first 3 days of any of the busier Camino routes like the Frances, and possibly a bit towards the end. So if you're booking a few days at the start and a few days at the end, you'll find that things start to thin out in the middle section. Not sure where everybody goes, but it thins out and you don't have to worry then, and you can just stay where you feel like, whatever it feels. Of course, in the first 3 days, as long as you're fit enough, you can just walk a bit further or walk a bit less when you find somewhere, as long as you're avoiding staying in the main towns that, for example, the Brierley guidebook tells you is the end of a stage. They're always going to be busier. If you stay in the smaller towns, most of the time, it should be all right. But there's always the opportunity, of course, to get a cab back to where you just came from and get a cab back in the morning. It's funny, the Camino sorts itself out. All of these worries that you're having, all the fears just melt away and you can become one with the Camino. Well, after all that, if you've still got any worries, certainly on the booking accommodation point of view, why don't you give this video a quick look? It'll help you out. Buen Camino.